Your reaction is the fuel. Your calm is the shutdown. Stop feeding what's draining you. And I need you to really feel how true that is, because for a long time, you thought the problem was their distance, their silence, their mixed signals, their coldness. But the hidden problem was what happened inside you every time they did it. The spike in your chest, the rush in your mind, the urge to fix, to explain, to reach, to prove you're not mad, to prove you're still loving, to prove you're safe, to prove you're worth staying for. That urge, that reaction, became the energy that kept the dynamic alive. Because every time they pulled back and you rushed forward, you taught the pattern a lesson. You taught it that distance gets rewarded. You taught it that silence gets attention. You taught it that confusion gets your emotional labor. You taught it that if they withdraw, you will carry the connection harder. You will try more. You will soften more. You will chase the closeness that should have been mutual. And I'm not saying you did anything wrong by caring. Caring is beautiful. Loving deeply is not a weakness. The problem is when your care becomes your leash, when your love becomes the thing that gets used against your peace, when your reaction becomes predictable, so predictable that the other person doesn't even have to show up consistently. They only have to trigger you, and you do the rest. That is why your calm is the shutdown. Calm is the moment you refuse to be triggered into self-abandonment. Calm is you noticing the urge to react and choosing not to follow it. Calm is you letting the silence be silence, not a problem you must solve. Calm is you refusing to negotiate your worth through anxiety, because the cycle feeds on your reaction the way fire feeds on oxygen. The reaction is the oxygen. The long message, the quick reply, the angry response, the emotional explanation, the desperate check-in, even the "I'm fine" text when you're not fine. All of it is energy, and energy is what the pattern consumes. So when you stop reacting, you stop supplying the fuel. And I know that sounds simple, but it's not easy, because your body has been trained. Your nervous system has been trained. Your mind has been trained to treat their distance like danger. And when the body senses danger, it wants to act. It wants to fix. It wants to chase. It wants to restore connection, because connection feels like safety. That is why you react. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Because your heart is wired to attach, to repair, to reach for love. But here's the truth. The way you've been reacting has been draining you. It drained your sleep because your mind wouldn't stop. It drained your appetite because your stomach lived in knots. It drained your joy because you couldn't fully relax. It drained your self-respect because you kept doing emotional labor for someone who kept giving you uncertainty. And every time you react, you pay again. You pay with your peace. You pay with your energy. You pay with your dignity, because you leave the conversation feeling empty, because you gave too much, because you explained too hard, because you tried to be understood by someone who keeps choosing misunderstanding. So I want you to see calm differently. Calm is not passive. Calm is not you pretending you don't care. Calm is not you going numb. Calm is discipline. Calm is strength. Calm is self-respect in action. Calm is you saying, I will not keep feeding what drains me. And the reason this matters is because your reaction doesn't just affect them, it affects you. The more you react, the more you reinforce the emotional habit. You teach your brain that every silence is an emergency. You teach your body that every delay requires a response. You teach your heart to live on adrenaline, to live on hope and fear, to live on highs and lows. That's why you feel addicted to the cycle, It's not just emotional, it's physiological. Your body starts craving the relief that comes when they finally respond, when they finally show warmth again. You confuse that relief with love, but it's just your nervous system coming down from stress. Calm breaks that addiction. At first, calm will feel like discomfort. It will feel like you're holding your breath. It will feel like you're doing something wrong. It will feel like you're losing control. But you're not losing control. You're releasing the illusion of control. Because reacting never truly gave you control. It only gave you the temporary feeling that you were doing something, that you were trying, that you were preventing loss. But the truth is, you cannot control another person's capacity with your reaction. You cannot force emotional maturity with your anxiety. You cannot earn consistency by overgiving. So you stop, you pause, you let the urge pass, you let your heart scream for a second, and you still choose calm. Because calm is you choosing yourself in the moment you used to abandon yourself. And this is where the heart-touching part comes in. Calm is you finally protecting the version of you that was always trying. The version of you that wrote long paragraphs with tears in your eyes. The version of you that stayed up at night thinking of better words. The version of you that kept believing love could fix what fear was breaking. That version of you deserves rest. That version of you deserves someone to step in and say, you don't have to perform your worth anymore. That someone is you. So what do you do practically? When you feel the urge to react, you name it. You say, this is the old pattern. This is the old panic. This is my body trying to restore safety. Then you choose a different action. Not texting, not checking, not responding immediately. You breathe. You drink water. You go for a walk. You write the message in your notes and don't send it. You call a friend. You put your phone down. You give your nervous system a new experience, the experience of staying safe without chasing. Because every time you choose calm, you build self-trust, and self-trust is what heals you. Self-trust is what tells your body, I won't abandon you. Self-trust is what makes you feel strong again. And eventually, something changes. The silence doesn't scare you the same way. The delay doesn't hook you the same way. The mixed signal doesn't pull you into overthinking the same way. You start feeling lighter because you are no longer feeding what drains you. Your reaction is the fuel. Your calm is the shutdown. This is not about punishing them. This is about saving you. This is about taking your life back one moment at a time until calm becomes your normal, and you finally remember what it feels like to breathe without waiting for someone else to give you permission. Silence isn't a weapon, it's a boundary, and you don't owe access to someone who mishandled your heart. I need you to sit with that because you've been taught, directly or indirectly, that being a good person means always responding, always explaining, always giving people one more chance to understand you. You've been conditioned to believe that if someone is upset, it's your job to fix it. If someone pulls away, it's your job to chase. If someone misunderstands you, it's your job to clarify until they finally get it. And that habit can look like love, but most of the time it's just fear. Fear of being abandoned, fear of being seen as cruel, fear of being the bad guy in a story where you were the one getting hurt. A boundary silence is different from a revenge silence. Revenge silence wants to trigger pain. Boundary silence wants to stop pain. Revenge silence is about control. Boundary silence is about protection. And protection is not something you should feel guilty for. If someone has repeatedly mishandled your feelings, if someone has repeatedly turned your vulnerability into something they avoid, dismiss, or use against you, then access is not a right. Access is earned. Access is the privilege of being trusted with your inner world, and your inner world is sacred. The hardest part is that you've been giving access to someone who kept proving they didn't know how to hold it. You gave them your honesty, and they met it with distance. You gave them your softness, and they met it with inconsistency. You gave them your needs, and they treated those needs like pressure. You gave them patience, and it became permission. And over time, you started believing that if you just communicate better, if you just say it the right way, if you just stay calm enough, they'll finally show up. But what if the problem was never your wording? What if the problem was that they benefited from your constant access while refusing the responsibility that access requires? So silence becomes the boundary that says, I'm no longer participating in the dynamic where my heart is available and my peace is negotiable. It says, I'm not going to keep offering my emotional labor to someone who keeps returning it with uncertainty. It says, I'm not going to keep explaining my pain to someone who keeps acting like pain is inconvenient. And if that sounds harsh, it's only because you've been overgiving for so long that normal boundaries feel like cruelty. You do not owe anyone instant replies. You do not owe anyone unlimited chances. You do not owe anyone access to your thoughts, your feelings, your healing process, especially if they've used your openness as something to step on instead of something to respect. You don't owe a person your vulnerability just because they ask for it. And you don't owe a person continued closeness just because they miss the benefits of you. Missing you is not the same as being safe with you. Wanting you is not the same as valuing you. And your silence is how you stop confusing desire with devotion. Because here's the truth. A lot of people don't respect words. They respect boundaries. They don't take you seriously when you explain. They take you seriously when you stop. Not because they're evil, but because your constant explaining can become background noise. Your constant availability can become something they assume. And when something is assumed, it's taken for granted. Silence breaks the assumption. Silence is the moment you stop being the person who always makes it okay. And you might feel a wave of guilt when you choose silence, because your heart is compassionate. Your heart doesn't want to hurt people. Your heart wants to resolve, to repair, to keep peace. But ask yourself, what peace were you keeping? Were you keeping peace, or were you keeping the connection alive by sacrificing your truth? Were you keeping peace, or were you keeping yourself in a loop where you constantly had to explain why you deserve basic consideration? Because if the peace only exists when you're quiet about your needs, that peace is not peace, it's self-abandonment. Boundary silence is you choosing self-respect over endless negotiation. It's you saying, I'm not going to keep pleading for decency. I'm not going to keep chasing someone who disappears when emotions get real. I'm not going to keep offering warmth to someone who keeps turning cold and expecting me to stay the same. Silence is the boundary that protects the part of you that kept getting bruised, the part that kept hoping, the part that kept holding on, the part that kept believing love would eventually be enough. And this is important. Silence doesn't mean you hate them. Silence doesn't mean you're trying to win. Silence doesn't mean you're playing a game. Silence means you're finally listening to your body. Your body has been telling you the truth in 100 quiet ways. The tight chest, the restless sleep, the racing mind, the constant bracing. Your body has been begging you for safety. Silence is you giving your body what it's been asking for. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop proving. Stop trying to be understood by someone who keeps choosing not to understand. If someone wants to understand, they'll lean in. They'll ask questions. They'll take accountability. They'll show consistent effort. They won't require you to bleed on the page to earn basic care. And yes, silence will feel uncomfortable at first. It will feel like you're holding back something that wants to pour out. It will feel like you're resisting a reflex. That's because your nervous system is used to reacting. It's used to chasing clarity. It's used to trying to secure closeness. But if you can sit in that discomfort, you'll notice something powerful. Your mind gets quieter. Your heart stops sprinting. Your self-respect starts to return. You begin to realize that you can survive not responding. You can survive not explaining. You can survive being misunderstood by someone who never held your feelings properly anyway. Silence isn't a weapon. It's a boundary. It's not meant to harm them. It's meant to protect you. It's the line that says, "My heart is not public property. My time is not unlimited. My peace is not up for negotiation." And the moment you treat your access as sacred, you stop begging people to value you, because you start valuing you first. The moment you stop explaining, chasing, and proving, you take your power back. And I know that sounds like a slogan until you remember how many times you tried. How many times you typed out the long message with shaking hands. How many times you carefully chose your words so you wouldn't sound too emotional. How many times you tried to be calm while your heart was screaming. How many times you tried to explain your pain in a way that wouldn't make them shut down. You didn't just communicate, you performed communication. You carried the burden of being understood while they carried the comfort of avoiding. And here's what's heartbreaking. You started believing it was your job to make them get it. You started believing if you could just find the perfect words, the perfect timing, the perfect tone, then everything would click, and they would finally see you, finally soften, finally show up. So you chased clarity, you chased reassurance, you chased closure, you chased effort. You chased the version of them you kept hoping existed underneath the distance. But chasing doesn't create intimacy, it creates imbalance. And proving doesn't create love, it creates exhaustion. Because every time you chase, you place yourself beneath them. You turn their attention into a prize. You turn their basic effort into something you must earn. You turn your needs into a negotiation instead of a normal part of connection. And the more you do that, the more you teach your nervous system that love is something you must fight for, something you must convince someone to give you. That is not love. That is emotional labor with a heartbeat. So power begins the moment you stop explaining, chasing, and proving, because you stop feeding the imbalance. You stop feeding the dynamic where they withdraw and you pursue. You stop feeding the role you were trapped in, the role of translator, of fixer, of emotional manager. You stop being the one who carries the weight of two people's feelings. Explaining can be a beautiful thing in a healthy relationship, but when you're explaining to someone who keeps avoiding responsibility, explaining becomes begging. Explaining becomes you trying to convince someone to care. Explaining becomes you putting your pain on display like evidence in a courtroom, hoping they'll finally say, "Okay, I believe you. Okay, I'll take you seriously." And if you keep doing that, you eventually lose something precious, your self-trust. You start doubting your own reality. You start thinking, maybe I really am too much. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe if I just ask differently, it will work. But the truth is, someone who wants to understand doesn't require you to bleed for it. Someone who values you doesn't punish you for having feelings. Someone who is emotionally safe doesn't make you prove you deserve respect. So when you stop explaining, you're not giving up. You're waking up. You're finally recognizing that your energy has been going into the wrong place. You've been trying to build a bridge to someone who keeps stepping back from the edge. You've been trying to create closeness with someone who treats closeness like a threat. And you can't love someone into emotional maturity. You can't speak someone into accountability. You can't explain someone into consistency. Chasing is another trap. Chasing feels like action. It feels like you're doing something. It feels like you're fighting for love. But chasing is not action. It's anxiety. It's your nervous system trying to restore safety by pulling the person closer. It's you trying to control an uncertain situation by becoming more available. And the more you chase, the more you lose yourself. You lose your dignity. You lose your calm. You lose your center. You lose the ability to feel steady in your own life because you're constantly reacting to them. So when you stop chasing, you stop giving them control over your emotions. You stop letting their silence dictate your mood. You stop letting their distance dictate your self-worth. You stop letting their mixed signals dictate your decisions. You return your attention to your own life, and that return is power. And proving is the most painful one, because proving means you don't feel safe to be yourself. Proving means you think you have to demonstrate your value. Proving means you think love is conditional, that if you're patient enough, pretty enough, loyal enough, calm enough, then you'll be chosen. And you know what that does? It turns love into a performance. It turns your heart into a project. It turns your life into a constant audition, where you're always trying to be the version of yourself that won't be abandoned. But love is not an audition. Love is mutual. So when you stop proving, you stop shrinking. You stop editing your truth. You stop hiding your needs. You stop accepting crumbs like they're a feast. You stop treating their inconsistency as something you must tolerate to keep them. Taking your power back doesn't mean you become hard. It means you become clear. Clear about what you deserve. Clear about what you will no longer accept. Clear about what your heart requires to stay open. And yes, this will feel uncomfortable at first, because you've been conditioned to believe that if you don't chase, everything will collapse. If you don't explain, they won't understand. If you don't prove, you won't be chosen. But here is the truth you need to hold. If something collapses the moment you stop carrying it, it was never stable in the first place. A healthy connection does not require you to chase love. A healthy connection does not require you to explain your pain repeatedly. A healthy connection does not require you to prove your worth. So the moment you stop explaining, chasing, and proving, you take your power back, because you stop pouring your life into someone else's confusion. You stop losing nights to overthinking. You stop losing mornings to anxiety. You stop losing your identity to the role of fixer. You stop handing your heart to someone who keeps mishandling it. And the heart-touching part is this. Taking your power back is you finally choosing the person who deserved your effort all along. You. It's you becoming the one who shows up for you. It's you becoming the one who protects you. It's you becoming the one who says, I'm done begging for basic love. I'm done proving my value. I'm done chasing someone who keeps running. And from that place, you don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to chase anyone. You don't need to prove anything. You just live, calmly, clearly, with your power in your own hands. Detach for healing, not revenge. Let consequences teach what your words couldn't. Because revenge keeps you emotionally handcuffed to the very person you're trying to be free from. Revenge still wakes up thinking about them. Revenge still checks for reactions. Revenge still waits for proof that they felt it. And if your goal is peace, then revenge is the longest road you can take, because it makes your healing dependent on someone else's pain. Healing detachment is different. Healing detachment is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't explain one last time. It simply stops volunteering your heart for a situation that keeps cutting it. Healing detachment is you saying, I am done paying for love with anxiety. I'm done living in suspense. I'm done making my nervous system a hostage to somebody's moods. And that decision matters, because the moment you detach for healing, you stop trying to win the story, and you start rebuilding your life. Let me tell you why revenge detachment is such a trap. When you detach to punish, you still need them to notice. You still need them to miss you. You still need them to collapse. You still need them to regret. That keeps your attention glued to them, and your attention is your life. Your attention is your energy, your focus, your sleep, your mood, your ability to feel joy. So if your detachment is secretly a message, then your detachment is not freedom, it's a performance. And performances are exhausting, because you're still waiting for applause. Healing detachment doesn't need applause. Healing detachment doesn't need them to understand. Healing detachment doesn't need the perfect apology. Healing detachment just needs you to be honest about what the pattern did to you. It made you small. It made you anxious. It made you overthink. It made you chase clarity from someone who kept you in fog. It made you question your worth, not because you weren't worthy, but because you were trying to feel secure in a connection that was built on uncertainty. And that's why consequences matter. Because consequences are what remain when you stop explaining. Consequences are what remain when you stop pleading for basic respect. Consequences are what remain when you stop carrying the entire emotional weight. Consequences are not revenge. Consequences are reality. They are the natural result of behavior meeting boundaries. You tried words. You tried patience. You tried understanding. You tried being calm. You tried being kind. You tried being the bigger person. You tried communicating your needs like they were gentle suggestions so the other person wouldn't shut down. You tried so much that you became tired. And that tiredness wasn't just emotional, it was physical. Your body got used to bracing. Your mind got used to scanning. Your heart got used to hoping and hurting in the same breath. So when you detach, you are not giving up. You are finally listening to what your body has been begging you to do. Protect yourself. Detaching for healing means you stop making contact your coping mechanism. You stop sending one more message just to soothe your anxiety. You stop reaching out just to calm the panic. You stop looking for reassurance from the person who created the insecurity. That is a huge shift, because it forces you to find stability inside yourself instead of chasing it from someone else. It's not easy at first. At first it feels like withdrawal, because your nervous system learned to associate their attention with relief. But relief is not love. Relief is your body coming down from stress. And the more you detach for healing, the more your body learns a new truth. I can be safe without chasing. Now, here's the part you have to accept if you want real freedom. You cannot make someone understand you with the right words if they are committed to misunderstanding. You cannot convince someone to value you with the perfect explanation if they are comfortable taking you for granted. You cannot talk someone into emotional maturity if they keep choosing avoidance. Words don't teach people who refuse to sit with the truth. Boundaries do. Consequences do. Absence does, not as a weapon, but as a reality check. Because when you stop reacting, the dynamic changes. When you stop chasing, the pattern loses fuel. When you stop explaining, the story gets quiet. And in that quiet, a person has to face themselves. They have to face the emptiness where your energy used to be. They have to face the fact that you were carrying more than they admitted. They have to face the discomfort of not having instant access to your warmth. That discomfort is not your responsibility to fix. That discomfort is their invitation to grow. And I know your heart wants to step in. Your heart wants to rescue. Your heart wants to soften the consequence so they don't feel it too sharply. But look at what rescuing has cost you. Rescuing has cost you sleep. Rescuing has cost you dignity. Rescuing has cost you the ability to relax. Rescuing has cost you your self-trust because every time your instincts said, "This is not safe," you overrode them to keep the connection alive. So detaching for healing means you stop rescuing people from the consequences of how they treated you. This is what people don't understand about consequences. Consequences are not cruelty. Consequences are how reality teaches. If a person can withdraw, give crumbs, ignore needs, create confusion, and still receive your full attention, your full softness, your full loyalty, then what lesson are they learning? They're learning that your heart has no price. They're learning that you will adapt to anything. They're learning that your boundaries are negotiable. And that is not a lesson you want to keep teaching. So you detach and you let consequences speak. You let your silence say what your words could not. You let your absence say, "I'm not available for this pattern." You let your calm say, "I'm not going to be pulled into chaos anymore." You let your boundary say, "Access to me requires responsibility." And here's what's going to happen. Your mind will try to bargain. Your mind will say, "Maybe I should just send one final message. Maybe I should just explain it one last time. Maybe I should just be nice." But you already were nice. You were kind. You were understanding. You were patient. The problem was never that you lacked compassion. The problem was that your compassion was being used as a substitute for their accountability. Detaching for healing means you stop confusing compassion with availability. You can have compassion and still have boundaries. You can care about someone and still refuse access. You can wish them well and still choose distance. You can forgive and still not return. Forgiveness is not a reunion. Forgiveness is a release. It's you deciding you won't carry the poison anymore, not you deciding they get unlimited chances. And detaching for healing also means you stop needing to be seen as the good one, because a lot of people stay stuck because they are addicted to being understood. They want to be the reasonable one, the loyal one, the one who tried. But you don't need to prove you tried. Your body knows you tried. Your heart knows you tried. The exhaustion is proof. The sleepless nights are proof. The overthinking was proof. So you don't need to win the argument. You need to win your life back. Let consequences teach what your words couldn't, because words can be dismissed, twisted, minimized, debated. But consequences are simple. Consequences don't argue. Consequences don't beg. Consequences don't chase. Consequences just exist. And when consequences arrive, a person either grows or they don't. They either take responsibility or they blame. They either step up with consistent effort or they disappear. And that outcome gives you clarity you don't have to fight for. Because if someone only values you when you're gone, that tells you something. If someone only tries when they're scared, that tells you something. If someone respects your boundary, that tells you something. If someone punishes your boundary, that tells you something. Consequences reveal character. Consequences reveal capacity. Consequences reveal whether the connection can ever be safe. And your job is not to control what they learn. Your job is to protect what you've learned. You've learned that your peace is expensive. You've learned that your energy is sacred. You've learned that love without consistency is a slow heartbreak. You've learned that your nervous system cannot thrive in uncertainty. You've learned that you can't keep calling pain patience and expect your heart to stay whole. So detach for healing, not revenge. Let go of the fantasy of destroying someone with silence, because that fantasy keeps you tied to them. Instead, choose the kind of silence that builds you, the kind of silence that calms your body, the kind of silence that returns you to yourself. The kind of silence that makes room for your life to expand again. And if they collapse internally, if they struggle, if they regret, if they feel the loss, that is not your trophy. That is not your mission. That is just reality catching up. Your mission is peace. Your mission is returning to your own center. Your mission is becoming the kind of person who no longer needs anyone else to validate your worth. Because the most powerful consequence is not what happens to them. It's what happens to you. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop reacting. You start sleeping again. You start breathing again. You start feeling steady again. You start choosing relationships that don't require you to abandon yourself. And when you detach for healing, you don't have to threaten anyone with your silence. Your silence becomes your sanctuary. Your calm becomes your power. Your boundary becomes your freedom.